The year is 1944. The world is burning in war, but in Montana, another kind of fire is rising. Slower, deeper, and far more personal. The Dutton Ranch stands like a monument to survival. But survival has never meant peace. It only means you lived long enough to suffer what comes next. Spencer Dutton is no longer the man who once fought battles overseas and returned home as a hero. Now he is something heavier, a man carrying too many graves in his memory and too many names still depending on him. The land looks the same, but everything else has changed. And this time, the enemy is not just outside the gates. It is inside the family. Because every legacy reaches a moment where inheritance turns into conflict. And in 1944, the Dutton name is about to face that moment head on. The silence of the Dutton Ranch in 1944 is not peaceful. It is the kind of silence that comes after too many storms, when even the land itself feels tired of remembering. Spencer Dutton returns to Montana carrying a weight no man should ever have to carry alone. The war has taken pieces of him, not just from his body, but from his soul. Every mile he traveled back home felt less like a journey and more like a test of whether he still belonged to this place, or whether he had already become a stranger to it. But the ranch does not ask questions. It only waits. And waiting, in this family, is never safe. Because the Dutton legacy does not pause for grief. It does not slow down for healing. It moves forward even when the people inside it are falling apart. Spencer's arrival does not bring celebration. It brings tension. The kind of tension that sits in the air before a storm breaks open the skid. The workers on the land watch him carefully, as if trying to decide whether the man who left is the same man who returned. But deep down, everyone already knows the answer. He is not the same. Inside the house, the walls feel smaller than they used to. Memories of Jacob and Kara still linger like shadows that refuse to leave their places. Their presence is not physical anymore, but it is everywhere. In the way the house is kept, in the way decisions are imagined before they are made, in the way silence carries more authority than words ever could. Now that silence belongs to Spencer, and that is the problem. Because leadership in the Dutton family has never been about power alone. It has always been about control over chaos. And chaos, in 1944, is growing faster than anyone can contain. The younger generation is no longer children. They are standing at the edge of adulthood, shaped by a world that is preparing to take them far beyond Montana. One of them carries the name of Spencer's lost past, a reminder of love, loss, and everything that was taken too soon. The other carries the weight of expectation, the burden of being a Dutton in a time when the world is demanding sacrifices from every family it touches. And between them stands something unspoken, a question that no one dares to ask out loud. Who does the land truly belong to now? Spencer tries to hold the family together, but the truth is already forming cracks beneath his feet. He sees it in the way decisions are questioned instead of obeyed. He hears it in the way loyalty is no longer automatic, but conditional. The ranch is still strong, but the unity that once protected it is slowly disappearing. And worse than that, there are whispers. Whispers that the war will not only take sons from this family, but also bring back men who will no longer fit into the lives they left behind. Whispers that the world outside is changing so fast that even the Dutton name may not survive what is coming next. Spencer stands alone one evening, looking over the land that once felt like home. The wind moves through the fields like it remembers every argument, every burial, every promise made and broken here. For a moment, he closes his eyes. And in that silence, he realizes something terrifying. The ranch is not waiting for him to save it. It is waiting to see if he will survive it. The weight of 1944 does not only sit on the shoulders of Spencer Dutton, it spreads through the entire family like a slow poison that no one can see but everyone can feel. The world beyond Montana is at war, and even though the Dutton Ranch feels far from the battlefields, the war still finds its way home. It arrives not in bullets, but in letters. Not in explosions, but in silence after bad news. Every envelope that comes with an official stamp makes hearts stop for a second longer than they used to. Because in a time like this, every name matters. Every young man feels temporary. Every goodbye feels like it might be the last. And inside the ranch, that fear is growing roots. Spencer tries to stay strong, but leadership in this new era is not about riding into danger anymore. It is about holding together what is slowly falling apart. And that is something even he is not fully prepared for. The man who once survived wars outside the country is now facing a different kind of war, one fought inside his own home. The younger generation begins to change under this pressure. They are no longer just sons of the land. They are becoming men shaped by uncertainty. One of them carries innocence that is slowly being replaced by responsibility too heavy for his age. The other carries ambition. But ambition in the Dutton family has always come with consequences. And those consequences never stay quiet for long. There is tension between them, but it is not loud. It is worse than that. It is silent, growing beneath every conversation, hiding inside every shared glance. They are connected by blood, but divided by something deeper. The question of who they are meant to become in a world that no longer feels stable. Spencer sees it all, even when nothing is said. And that is what scares him the most, because he knows history. He knows what happens when a strong family starts to disagree on its future. Meanwhile, Elizabeth's absence still echoes through parts of the story, like a wound that never fully closed. Her name is not spoken, often, but it does not need to be. Her memory already lives in every unfinished sentence, every decision left unresolved, and far away in Boston, her life is no longer the same as it once was. The woman she used to be no longer exists in the same form, but the land has a way of calling people back, especially those who tried to leave it behind. Spencer sometimes wonders if distance truly protects anyone, or if it only delays the moment when everything comes crashing back together. Because in his experience, nothing in this family ever truly ends. It only pauses until the timing becomes worse. And timing, in 1944, is everything. As the war intensifies overseas, rumors begin to reach Montana. Young men being sent to Europe, battles that change overnight, entire futures disappearing before they even have a chance to begin. And suddenly, the Dutton Ranch is not just protecting land anymore, it is preparing to lose its future. Spencer stands in the doorway one night, watching the younger generation talk quietly by the fire. There is laughter, but it feels fragile. There is hope, but it feels borrowed. He realizes something in that moment that no one else seems ready to accept. This is the calm before another storm, but unlike before, this storm will not just test their strength, it will test whether the Dutton legacy deserves to continue at all. By the time winter begins to settle over Montana in 1944, nothing about the Dutton Ranch feels stable anymore. Even the land seems quieter, like it is holding its breath, waiting for something no one can predict. Spencer Dutton has become a man people look at differently now, not with admiration alone, but with expectation. He is no longer just a returned son of the ranch. He is the center of it, the axis everything turns around. And that kind of responsibility does not rest gently on anyone. It crushes slowly. Every decision now feels heavier than the last. Every silence in the house feels like a warning. And every conversation ends with things left unsaid. Because the real problem in 1944 is not just war outside the ranch. It is the growing uncertainty inside it. The younger generation is standing at a dangerous crossroads. They are old enough to understand power, but not old enough to fully understand its cost. They hear stories of their fathers and grandfathers, of battles fought and land protected through violence, sacrifice, and stubborn survival. But stories do not prepare them for what comes next. Reality does, and reality is changing faster than the Dutton name can adapt. One of Spencer's sons begins to show signs of the same fire that once defined this family, a fire that can either build an empire or burn it to the ground. He is not reckless, but he is curious about the world beyond Montana. And curiosity, in this family, always comes with danger attached. The other son, shaped differently by experience and loss, begins to feel something more complicated. Not weakness, but distance. As if he is already halfway between loyalty and independence. And Spencer sees it, even if no one else does. That is the burden of leadership, to see the fracture before it breaks. But the real question is not whether the family is changing, it is whether it is changing together or apart. Spencer tries to bring order through presence. He walks the ranch more often, speaks less, observes more. But observation does not always equal control. Sometimes it only confirms what you are afraid to admit. The ranch is no longer unified in spirit the way it once was under Jacob and Kara. Their absence is not just emotional, it is structural. They were the foundation that held different personalities together under one purpose. Without them, every decision feels like it belongs to someone else, and no one fully agrees on who that should be. In the distance, the world continues its collapse and rebirth. News from Europe arrives in fragments, some victories, many losses, and every piece of information brings the same unspoken fear, that the war is not just happening somewhere else anymore. It is shaping the next generation of Dutton men. Spencer receives a letter one evening that changes nothing on the surface, but changes everything underneath it. A name mentioned, a deployment confirmed, a future suddenly placed in the hands of uncertainty. He does not show emotion when he reads it. He never does anymore. But later that night, alone in the barn, he allows himself one moment of truth, just one, because even he cannot ignore it forever. The ranch is no longer just a place to protect. It is now a place preparing to survive what its own legacy is about to become. The year 1944 does not wait for anyone to feel ready. It pushes forward, like time itself has lost patience with the Dutton family. As spring begins to return to Montana, it does not bring peace. It brings movement. Quiet, unavoidable movement. Horses are still running across the land, fences are still being repaired, cattle are still being driven. But everything feels temporary now. As if the ranch is no longer building a future, but maintaining what little time it has left before everything changes again. Spencer Dutton feels it more than anyone else. He is no longer just a man returning home. He is a man holding together a history that is beginning to slip through his fingers. And the hardest part is not the enemies he can see. It is the uncertainty he cannot control, because the war overseas is now directly tied to his own blood. Young men from the ranch begin to leave. Not all at once, but one by one. Some with pride, some with fear they try to hide, and some with a silence so deep it feels like they already know they will not return the same. Spencer watches them go, and for the first time in his life, he does not know what to say. There is no speech strong enough to protect them, no promise honest enough to guarantee their return. Only the Dutton name, and even that suddenly feels smaller in a world this large. Inside the house, the absence of Jacob and Kara is more visible than ever. Their presence used to hold conversations together, like invisible structure holding up collapsing walls. Now, without them, disagreements do not resolve, they expand. Different visions for the ranch begin to surface. Some believe the land must be modernized to survive the changing world. Others believe change is the first step toward losing everything their ancestors died for. Spencer stands in the middle of it all, not as odd as a ruler, but as someone trying to prevent the collapse from becoming permanent. And yet, even he is beginning to understand a painful truth. You cannot preserve a legacy by force alone. Not anymore. Because the world in 1944 is not interested in preserving the past. It is obsessed with building something new, whether the old world survives or not. And Montana is no exception. Far away, Elizabeth's story continues to exist in silence. Boston has given her distance, but not peace. Life there is structured, polite, controlled, but every quiet moment carries something familiar underneath it. A memory of Montana she cannot fully erase. She tells herself she has moved on. But some places never leave a person, and some people never fully leave a place. Back on the ranch, Spencer begins to notice something that unsettles him more than anything else so far. The younger generation is not just preparing for war, they are beginning to think differently. About authority, about land, about legacy, and about whether the Dutton way of life is something to continue or something to challenge. That thought alone feels dangerous. Because the moment a family begins to question its own foundation, everything built on it becomes uncertain. And Spencer knows what comes after uncertainty. Conflict, not with outsiders, but within the bloodline itself. As the sun sets over the Montana horizon, The ranch is no longer just a home. It feels like a waiting ground for decisions that cannot be undone, and for a future that will not belong to everyone who is standing there now. By the time 1944 reaches its final stretch, the Dutton Ranch is no longer standing in calm uncertainty. It is standing on the edge of something irreversible. The war has stopped being a distant shadow. It has become a shaping force, pulling at every member of the family in ways no one can fully control. The younger Dutton men are no longer just sons of Montana. They are now part of something much larger, a global conflict that does not care about legacy, land, or bloodlines. And that is exactly what makes it dangerous. Because the Dutton family has always believed the land is everything. But the world is now proving otherwise. Spencer Dutton feels the shift in every corner of the ranch, in the way people speak more carefully, in the way decisions are made faster, almost as if there is no guarantee there will be time to reconsider them later. Even the air feels heavier, as though it is carrying the weight of choices that have not yet been spoken aloud. And then comes the most difficult truth of all. The next generation is no longer waiting for permission. One son begins to move with quiet independence, shaped by ambition and curiosity, drawn toward a future that may not center around the ranch at all. The other remains closer to the land, but even his loyalty now carries questions that were never there before. Not rebellion, but reflection. The kind that slowly changes a man from the inside out. Spencer sees both paths clearly, and neither of them leads to certainty. For a man who has survived war, distance, and loss, this is the first time he realizes that control was never the real challenge. The real challenge is time. Because time does not preserve anything. It transforms everything, even family, even loyalty, even love. Far away, Elizabeth's name becomes a memory that refuses to fade completely. Not a presence, not a return, but an echo. One that still exists in the emotional structure of the family, even if the world around her has moved on. And somewhere in that silence, the possibility of her return still lingers, not as romance, but as unfinished history. A history that the land itself seems unwilling to close. As winter approaches again, Spencer stands alone at the edge of the ranch. The wind moves through the fields with the same rhythm it always has, but it no longer feels comforting. It feels like it is counting down something no one has been able to name yet. Behind him, the house is full of life, but not unity. And ahead of him, the land stretches endlessly, but not peacefully. For the first time, Spencer understands what the Dutton legacy truly is in this moment of time. It is not victory. It is endurance under pressure that never stops increasing. And as the final light of day disappears over Montana, one truth settles into the silence like a warning that cannot be ignored. The real battle for the Dutton family is no longer coming from the outside world. It has already begun inside the bloodline itself. And when it fully breaks open, nothing on this land will ever be the same again.